On a December morning in 2009, in a quiet corner of North Carolina where pine trees whisper secrets and neighbors know each other by name, a young woman vanished from her home. Amanda Ross, 23 years old, mother of a 4-year-old daughter named Lily, simply disappeared. Her car sat in the driveway. Her purse rested on the kitchen counter. Her shoes waited by the door. Everything remained exactly where it should be, except Amanda herself. Her husband, Michael Ross, 28, told authorities he had left for work that morning around 7 and returned home to find her gone. No note, no sign of struggle, no explanation. The search that followed would consume the community, perplex investigators, and eventually go cold for nearly 6 years. But in 2015, when a small voice finally broke through the silence, the truth would emerge from the most unexpected source, and the arrest that followed would shatter everything this town thought it knew. How does a woman vanish from her own home in broad daylight? And what darkness can hide in plain sight for so long? Oak Ridge, North Carolina sits nestled in the Piedmont region, a town of barely 8,000 souls where tobacco fields give way to modest neighborhoods, and everyone seems connected by blood or history or both. The downtown consists of a single main street with a hardware store that's been there since 1947, a diner where the coffee stays hot all day, and a post office where the clerks still know your business before you walk through the door. In December, the air carries that particular southern winter quality, not quite cold enough for snow but damp enough to settle into your bones, with fog that rolls in from the fields at dawn and doesn't burn off until late morning. The Ross family lived on Maple Creek Road, a winding two-lane that curved through a neighborhood of ranch houses built in the 70s. Theirs was a pale yellow one-story with black shutters, a chain-link fence around the backyard, and a tire swing hanging from an oak tree that had stood there longer than any of the houses. Michael Ross worked as a machinist at a manufacturing plant 30 minutes away in the next county. Amanda stayed home with Lily, who had just started pre-kindergarten 3 days a week at the Baptist Church on Highway 52. Those who knew Amanda described her as quiet, soft-spoken, devoted to her daughter. She had grown up 2 counties over, met Michael at a friend's barbecue when she was 18, married him 10 months later. Her parents had passed away in a car accident when she was 20, leaving her with a modest inheritance that had helped with the down payment on the house. December 15, 2009 began like most winter mornings in Oak Ridge. The sky hung low and gray, threatening rain that wouldn't quite commit. Temperature hovered around 42 degrees. Michael Ross later told investigators he woke at 5:30, same as always, showered, dressed in his work uniform, navy blue pants and a gray company shirt with his name stitched above the pocket. Amanda was still sleeping. Lily was still sleeping. He said he made coffee in the kitchen, drank 1 cup standing at the counter, poured a second into his thermos. At 6:45, he claimed he kissed Amanda on the forehead, told her he loved her, whispered it so he wouldn't wake Lily, and left through the front door. His shift started at 7:30. The drive took him 40 minutes on a good day. Amanda's routine, as described by neighbors and family, rarely varied. She would wake around 7:15, get Lily up, make breakfast, usually cereal or toast. On Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, she would drive Lily to the church preschool at 8:30. On Mondays and Wednesdays, they stayed home. December 15th was a Tuesday. Lily should have been at school, but according to Michael, when he returned home at Fort Wentty that afternoon, both Amanda and Lily were gone. The house was unlocked. Amanda's cell phone lay on the coffee table. Her wallet sat inside her purse on the kitchen counter, $63 still tucked inside. Her car, a 1998 Honda Accord, remained parked in the driveway, slightly crooked as if she had been in a hurry the last time she parked it. Michael Ross called authorities at 4:27 in the afternoon. The dispatcher noted his voice sounded calm, measured. He reported his wife and daughter missing. Said he didn't know where they could be. Said this wasn't like Amanda. The first deputy arrived at 4:41. Deputy Warren Mitchell, 16 years with the sheriff's department, walked through the house with Michael. Everything appeared orderly. Beds made, dishes washed and stacked in the drainer. Lily's toys scattered across the living room floor in the natural chaos of a child who had been playing. A coloring book lay open on the coffee table, crayons spread beside it. The picture showed a house and a tree and 3 stick figures, one tall, one medium, one small. By 5:15, 3 more deputies had arrived. They began a systematic search of the property. The backyard revealed nothing unusual. The tire swing hung motionless. A plastic sandbox sat covered with a tarp weighted down by bricks. The fence showed no damage, no indication anyone had climbed over or through. The deputies expanded their search to the surrounding woods, calling Amanda's name, calling for Lily. Their voices echoed through the pine trees as darkness began settling over Oak Ridge. At 6:30, Sheriff Thomas Bryan arrived and took Michael Ross's formal statement. Michael sat at his own kitchen table, hands folded, answering each question with careful precision. He had left at 6:45. Yes, he was certain of the time because he always left at 6:45. The drive to work took 40 minutes. He arrived at 7:28, punched his time card at 7:29. He provided the names of coworkers who could verify. His shift ended at 4. He drove straight home, arrived at Fort Wentty, found the house empty, called police immediately. No, Amanda hadn't mentioned any plans. No, she didn't have anywhere she might go. No, they hadn't been arguing. Everything was fine. Everything was normal. Those who observed Michael Ross that evening noted his composure. He didn't cry, didn't raise his voice, answered questions with the same steady tone, occasionally pausing as if carefully considering his words. When asked if Amanda might have left voluntarily, he shook his head. She wouldn't leave Lily, he said. She would never leave without Lily. The Amber Alert went out at 7:42. Amanda Ross, white female, 5 feet 4 inches, 120 pounds, brown hair, green eyes, last seen wearing unknown clothing. Lily Ross, white female, 4 years old, 3 feet tall, approximately 40 pounds, blonde hair, blue eyes, last seen wearing unknown clothing, possibly on foot, possibly in danger. The alert scrolled across television screens throughout North Carolina. Radio stations interrupted programming. Gas stations posted flyers by midnight. Volunteers gathered at the Oak Ridge Community Center by 8 the following morning. More than 200 people showed up with flashlights and thermoses of coffee, and a determination to find this mother and child. They spread out in organized search parties, walking grid patterns through the woods surrounding Maple Creek Road, checking ditches along every road within a 5-mile radius, knocking on doors, asking if anyone had seen anything, heard anything, noticed anything unusual. The temperature had dropped overnight. Rain had started falling around 3 in the morning, a cold, persistent drizzle that made everything slick and miserable. The search continued for 3 days. Bloodhounds tracked Amanda's scent from the house to the end of the driveway and then lost it, suggesting she had gotten into a vehicle. But her car remained in the driveway. Michael's truck had been at work, verified by security footage from the plant parking lot. Investigators checked taxi companies. None had picked up anyone from that address. They checked bus stations, train stations, airports. Nothing. Amanda and Lily had simply vanished. On the 4th day, investigators began looking more carefully at the timeline Michael had provided. His story never changed, not in detail, not in tone, but certain things didn't quite align. The odometer reading on Amanda's Honda showed 214 miles more than it had shown the previous week when she had taken it for an oil change. Michael couldn't explain the discrepancy. Amanda's mother's sister, Carol Jenkins, who lived in Raleigh, told investigators that Amanda had called her on December 13th, 2 days before she disappeared. Amanda had sounded upset, distant. When Carol asked what was wrong, Amanda said, "I just need to know that if something happened, you would take care of Lily." Carol had pressed for details, but Amanda had changed the subject, talked about Christmas plans, hung up after 15 minutes. Carol thought it was odd but hadn't pursued it further. Now, sitting in the sheriff's office, she couldn't stop thinking about those words. Deputies whispered quietly among themselves about Michael's behavior, how he had gone back to work after only 3 days, how he had declined to appear on the local news to make a public plea for Amanda and Lily's return, how he had told investigators he had thrown away Amanda's toothbrush because it had been sitting out and he needed to clean, how he had washed all the bedding and towels the day after Amanda disappeared because, he said, laundry had been piling up. Each action had a reasonable explanation. Each action also destroyed potential evidence. 2 weeks after the disappearance, investigators obtained search warrants for the house, Michael's truck, and Amanda's car. Forensic teams spent 18 hours going through every room, every surface, every corner. They found nothing. No blood, no sign of violence. No hidden compartments or suspicious items. The house was clean, extraordinarily clean. Michael had explained he had been keeping busy, unable to sleep. Cleaning helped him cope. The explanation made sense. It also made investigation impossible. Searches of Michael's computer revealed nothing concerning. His internet history showed news websites, sports scores, weather reports. His phone records showed calls to work, to his mother in Tennessee, to the pizza place on Highway 52. Nothing unusual, nothing incriminating. Amanda's phone, left behind on the coffee table, showed texts to Carol, to a friend from church, to the preschool confirming Lily's attendance for the week. The last message had been sent at 7:02 on the morning of December 15th. It was to Carol. It said, "Thank you for everything. Tell Lily I love her forever." Carol had assumed it was a typo, that Amanda meant "tell Lily I love her when you see her at Christmas." But reading it again, sitting with investigators, the phrasing felt wrong. Tell Lily, not tell her, as if Amanda knew she wouldn't be there to tell Lily herself. By January, the active search had ended. The case remained open, but investigators had no leads, no evidence, no direction forward. Michael Ross continued living in the house on Maple Creek Road. He went to work. He came home. Neighbors saw him mowing the lawn in summer, raking leaves in fall. He never mentioned Amanda. He never mentioned Lily. When people asked, he said investigators were still working on it, said he trusted they would find answers. His face remained expressionless. His voice remained steady. The swing in the backyard hung motionless through every season. The sandbox remained covered. Inside, in Lily's room, everything stayed exactly as it had been. The bed made. The stuffed animals arranged on the pillow. The coloring book still open on the coffee table, showing 3 stick figures holding hands. Part 2, the investigation. The search operation had been methodical and exhaustive. Sheriff Bryant had coordinated with the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation within 48 hours of the disappearance. Special Agent Patricia Morno arrived in Oak Ridge on December 17th, bringing with her a team of forensic specialists and investigative resources that the small sheriff's department simply didn't possess. They established a command center at the county courthouse, transformed a conference room into a map-covered war room where every reported sighting, every lead, every piece of information got pinned and categorized and cross-referenced. Volunteers had searched a radius of 20 miles from the Ross house. They walked through forests where pine needles muffled footsteps and branches caught at clothing. They waded through creeks running high with winter rain. They checked abandoned buildings, old tobacco barns slowly collapsing under their own weight, drainage culverts large enough to conceal a body. They found nothing. No clothing, no belongings, no trace of Amanda or Lily Ross. The media descended on Oak Ridge with the intensity that missing mother and child cases always generate. Television news vans parked outside the Ross house. Reporters did stand-ups with the yellow house visible in the background. National cable news picked up the story. Amanda's photograph appeared on screens across the country, a snapshot from Thanksgiving showing her smiling slightly, holding Lily on her lap, both of them wearing matching red sweaters. The image became iconic. Strangers in distant cities prayed for their safe return. Facebook groups formed. Theories proliferated. Everyone had an opinion about what had happened. Michael Ross refused all interview requests. His attorney, a man named Douglas Hendricks from a firm in Charlotte, issued a statement saying Michael was cooperating fully with authorities and asking for privacy during this difficult time. The refusal to speak publicly struck many as suspicious. Those who defended him said he was grieving, overwhelmed, entitled to handle his trauma privately. Those who doubted him pointed to every other parent who had begged publicly for their child's return, who had sobbed in front of cameras, who had done anything and everything to keep the story alive. Investigators interviewed everyone who knew the Ross family. Neighbors on Maple Creek Road described them as quiet, private, polite. Amanda occasionally walked with Lily to the mailbox. Michael mowed the lawn on Saturday mornings. They didn't host parties or have people over frequently. They kept to themselves. One neighbor, an elderly woman named Dorothy Simmons who lived 3 houses down, mentioned that she had sometimes heard raised voices coming from the Ross house late at night. Not screaming, she clarified, but intense conversation. Arguments maybe. She couldn't hear the words, just the tone. This had happened maybe half a dozen times over the past year. She hadn't thought much of it. All couples argued sometimes. Amanda's friends from church painted a picture of a devoted mother who seemed content, but perhaps a little isolated. She attended services most Sundays, always arriving alone with Lily because Michael worked Sunday shifts. She volunteered in the nursery. She participated in the women's Bible study group occasionally, but she rarely talked about her personal life. When other women complained about their husbands or joked about marital frustrations, Amanda smiled but said nothing. One woman, Jennifer Watts, remembered asking Amanda how she and Michael met, and Amanda's expression had changed, become distant. He was persistent, Amanda had said. Very persistent. The phrasing had stuck with Jennifer. Not romantic, not sweet, persistent. Investigators obtained phone records going back 2 years. They showed a pattern that seemed increasingly troubling. Amanda's calls were limited almost entirely to Carol, her aunt, and occasionally to Jennifer from church. But Michael's calls included several dozen to Amanda's phone throughout each month, sometimes 10 or 12 calls in a single day. When investigators asked Michael about this, he explained that he liked to check in, make sure Amanda and Lily were okay, see if Amanda needed him to pick anything up on the way home from work. It was sweet, he said. He worried about them. The explanation seemed reasonable. It also matched patterns investigators had seen in cases of controlling behavior. Financial records showed nothing unusual. Michael and Amanda had a joint checking account. Amanda had access to their money. She occasionally used the debit card for groceries, for gas, for Lily's preschool tuition. But investigators noticed that larger purchases, anything over $100, were almost always made by Michael. Amanda's separate account, the one funded by her inheritance, had been closed 8 months earlier. The remaining balance transferred to the joint account. Michael said this was Amanda's idea, that she wanted to simplify their finances. There was no way to verify this claim. The forensic examination of the house had revealed meticulous cleaning. Luminol testing showed no traces of blood. Chemical analysis of drains found common household cleaning products but nothing suspicious. The carpet in the master bedroom had been shampooed recently. Michael said Amanda had spilled coffee. The bathroom tiles gleamed. Michael said he liked things clean, had always been particular about cleanliness. Every explanation made sense in isolation. Together, they created a portrait of someone who had very carefully erased any potential evidence. Deputies whispered among themselves, comparing notes during coffee breaks, sharing observations they couldn't quite formalize into investigative reports. Deputy Mitchell mentioned how Michael's hands had been completely steady when he signed his statement. No tremor, no shake. Deputy Lisa Crawford noted that when she had asked Michael where he thought Amanda might be, he had paused for exactly 3 seconds before saying he didn't know. Not the immediate, desperate, "I don't know," of someone frantic with worry. A calculated pause. These observations meant nothing legally. They meant everything to investigators' instincts. Agent Morneau interviewed Michael 3 times. Each interview lasted several hours. Each time, Michael's story remained identical down to the smallest details. He had left at 6:45. Amanda was sleeping. Lily was sleeping. He drove to work, came home, found them gone. In Agent Morneau's experience, innocent people's stories tended to vary slightly in each retelling as memory worked to reconstruct events. The small details shifted, got clarified, became more or less precise. Liars often kept their stories absolutely rigid, afraid that any deviation would reveal the lie. Michael's unchanging narrative troubled her. The timeline itself presented problems. Michael claimed he left at 6:45. His time card showed he clocked in at 7:29. The drive from his house to the plant had been tested repeatedly by investigators. The fastest possible time, exceeding speed limits, was 37 minutes. The average time driving legally was 43 minutes. If Michael left at 6:45, he should have arrived at the plant no later than 7:28. He had clocked in at 7:29. The 1-minute difference seemed meaningless except that it left no buffer, no margin for error. No time to stop anywhere. No time to do anything except drive directly from house to plant. Unless he had actually left earlier than 6:45, or later. The discrepancy was small enough to be meaningless, significant enough to be suspicious. Investigators checked security footage from every business along Michael's route to work. A gas station 14 miles from his house had cameras covering the road. They reviewed footage from the morning of December 15th. Michael's truck appeared on camera at 7:06, heading toward the plant, driving exactly the speed limit. Nothing unusual, except that if he had left his house at 6:45, he should have passed that gas station around 7:02 or 7:03. The 4-minute delay suggested he had left later than claimed or had stopped somewhere. When confronted with this discrepancy, Michael said he must have misremembered the exact departure time. Maybe it was closer to 6:50. He hadn't been watching the clock that carefully. Physical evidence from Amanda's car proved inconclusive. The additional 214 miles on the odometer remained unexplained. Michael suggested Amanda might have driven somewhere without mentioning it, maybe taken Lily on a day trip. But Amanda's debit card showed no purchases outside Oak Ridge during that week. No gas station charges. No restaurant meals. No explanation for where she might have driven or why. The FBI became involved in January, bringing additional resources and expertise. They created a profile of Amanda's likely movements and state of mind. The message to Carol, the one saying, "Tell Lily I love her forever," suggested Amanda had been contemplating leaving or feared something might happen to her. But her phone, her wallet, her car, everything remained behind. If she had been planning to leave, she had taken nothing with her. If she had been taken against her will, there was no sign of struggle, no evidence of forced entry or confrontation. For those who have ever tried to solve a puzzle with missing pieces, the Amanda Ross case felt exactly like that. Every investigator could see the outline of what likely happened. But without evidence, without witnesses, without any concrete proof, all they had were suspicions and statistical probabilities. In cases where wives disappeared, the husband was responsible roughly 70% of the time. But statistics weren't evidence. Suspicion wasn't proof. By March of 2010, the active investigation had essentially stalled. Investigators continued following up on reported sightings, but none proved credible. A woman in Georgia thought she saw Amanda at a Walmart. It was someone else. A caller reported seeing a child matching Lily's description at a rest stop in Virginia. The child was with her biological parents. Hope generated hundreds of false leads. Desperation made people see what they wanted to see. The case went cold not with a dramatic revelation, but with a quiet acceptance that without new evidence, without a break, there was nowhere else to go. Sheriff Bryant reassigned deputies back to regular duties. Agent Morneau returned to Raleigh, the case file added to the stack of unsolved missing persons investigations. Michael Ross continued living in the yellow house on Maple Creek Road. He continued going to work. He continued his routine, unchanging, undisturbed. The only visible difference was that he had stopped maintaining the yard quite so carefully. The grass grew a little longer before he mowed it. Weeds crept into the flower beds. The swing in the backyard hung motionless, the ropes gradually fraying in the weather. Inside, Lily's room remained untouched. The coloring book still lay open on the coffee table. The 3 stick figures holding hands. A family frozen in crayon, permanent and false. Part 3, The Silence. 18 months after Amanda and Lily disappeared, in the summer of 2011, Michael Ross sold the house on Maple Creek Road. The sale happened quietly, listed with a real estate agency in the next county, marketed to buyers who might not know the property's history. A young couple from Greensboro purchased it for $23,000 below asking price. They repainted the yellow exterior a soft gray. They replaced the tire swing with a wooden playset. They had never heard of Amanda Ross. Michael moved to Wilmington, a coastal city 3 hours from Oak Ridge, where anonymity came easier and the past could be left behind. He rented a 1-bedroom apartment in a complex near the port. He found work at a shipping warehouse. He lived alone. Neighbors in Wilmington described him, when later asked, as polite but distant. He nodded hello in the parking lot. He kept his apartment neat. He worked regular hours. He had no visitors. No one knew where he had come from or what he was leaving behind. Carol Jenkins, Amanda's aunt, couldn't let go. She called the sheriff's department every month, asking for updates, demanding to know what was being done. The answers were always the same. The case remained open. Investigators followed up on any new leads. There was nothing new to report. Carol hired a private investigator, a former police detective from Charlotte who specialized in cold cases. He reviewed every document, interviewed everyone willing to talk, and reached the same conclusion law enforcement had. Michael was almost certainly responsible, but almost certainly wasn't enough. Without evidence, there was nothing to be done. For those who have ever doubted someone you love, who have felt that sick uncertainty about whether you truly know the person sleeping beside you, the years after 2010 must have been particular torture for anyone who had been close to Michael Ross. His mother, Linda Ross, living in Memphis, maintained her son's innocence with fierce determination. She gave interviews to anyone who would listen, appearing on local news programs, posting on social media, creating websites dedicated to finding Amanda and Lily. She offered a reward from her retirement savings, $5,000 for information leading to their safe return. No one ever claimed it. The psychological weight of unresolved loss creates its own kind of damage. Carol developed insomnia, lying awake night after night imagining scenarios. She pictured Amanda afraid, calling for help that never came. She pictured Lily confused, asking for her mother. The images were torture, but she couldn't make them stop. She attended therapy. The therapist talked about acceptance, about finding peace with uncertainty. Carol found the suggestions obscene. How could she accept not knowing? How could she find peace while Amanda and Lily were somewhere, dead or alive, waiting? In Oak Ridge, the case gradually faded from daily conversation. New tragedies occurred, demanded attention, filled the space where Amanda and Lily's story had been. The yellow house stood gray now, occupied by people who didn't know its ghosts. The church where Amanda had attended no longer mentioned her name in prayers. The preschool where Lily should have been learning her letters had a new class of 4-year-olds. Life continued because life always continues, indifferent to individual suffering. But certain details lingered in unexpected ways. Jennifer Watts, the woman from church who had asked Amanda about meeting Michael, couldn't shake the memory of Amanda's expression when she answered. That distant look. The word persistent carrying weight that Jennifer hadn't understood at the time. She thought about it constantly, wondered what she should have seen, whether she could have helped. Guilt is another form of haunting. In 2013, Michael Ross began a relationship with a woman named Sarah Mitchell who worked at a coffee shop near his apartment in Wilmington. She knew nothing about his past. He had told her he was divorced, that his ex-wife had custody of their daughter, that it was complicated and painful and he preferred not to discuss it. Sarah accepted this explanation. They dated for 7 months. She described him later as attentive, thoughtful, maybe a little controlling. He called multiple times a day. He wanted to know where she was, who she was with. He didn't like when she made plans without including him. These behaviors had seemed like devotion at first. Eventually, they felt suffocating. Sarah ended the relationship in October of 2013. Michael's reaction was calm. He said he understood. He said he hoped she would be happy. But for weeks afterward, she would notice his truck parked across from her apartment. He never approached, never called, just sat in his truck watching. She filed a police report. An officer spoke to Michael, told him to stay away. The truck stopped appearing. But Sarah moved to a different apartment anyway, got an unlisted phone number, told her friends what had happened. Several of them urged her to look Michael up online. She did. What she found made her physically ill. The marriage between Amanda and Michael had shown similar patterns to those Sarah experienced, though the full extent wouldn't become clear until much later. Friends of Amanda's, interviewed again in 2014, when the case was briefly reopened following a possible sighting in Florida that proved false, remembered small comments Amanda had made. How Michael didn't like her going places without him. How he had wanted her to quit her job as a receptionist at a dental office shortly after they married. How he had suggested strongly that she didn't need friends, that they had each other and that should be enough. At the time, these had seemed like normal relationship dynamics. In retrospect, they formed a pattern of isolation. Amanda's computer, examined again in 2014 with more sophisticated forensic tools, revealed deleted search history recovered from the hard drive. In the weeks before her disappearance, she had searched for domestic violence resources, for women's shelters in North Carolina, for information about custody rights for mothers leaving marriages. She had visited websites for legal aid services. She had looked up bus schedules to Raleigh, where Carol lived. She had been planning something. Whether she had been planning to leave or whether she had simply been gathering information, preparing for a possibility, the searches suggested fear. They suggested awareness that her situation required escape. Michael had access to that computer. Whether he had seen those searches, whether he had known Amanda was contemplating leaving, remained unknown. But the timeline suggested a terrible possibility. Amanda's searches occurred in late November and early December. She disappeared December 15th. The correlation might have been coincidence, or it might have been the trigger. In 2015, 5 years after Amanda and Lily vanished, Michael Ross married again. Her name was Catherine Pruitt, a dental hygienist he had met at a bar in Wilmington. She was 26, quiet, without much family. They married after knowing each other for 4 months, a courthouse wedding with no guests. Catherine moved into Michael's apartment. She quit her job because Michael said his salary was enough to support them both. She stopped seeing her friends because Michael said they took too much of her time. The pattern repeated itself with eerie precision. But Catherine was different from Amanda in one crucial way. She had a brother, James Pruitt, who lived in Wilmington and who paid attention. James noticed how his sister gradually withdrew, how she stopped answering his calls, how when he visited, Michael was always there, always listening, always inserting himself into every conversation. James didn't like Michael, couldn't articulate exactly why, just a feeling, an instinct that something was wrong. In May of 2015, Catherine showed up at James's apartment with a bruise on her wrist. She said she had fallen. James didn't believe her. He asked directly if Michael had hurt her. Catherine's eyes filled with tears, but she shook her head, said everything was fine, said James was worrying over nothing. But 3 weeks later, she showed up again, this time with a cut above her eyebrow. This time, James called the police. Catherine recanted, said it was an accident, refused to press charges. The officers took a report, but couldn't do anything without her cooperation. James did what Sarah Mitchell had done. He searched Michael Ross online. What he found sent him directly to the Wilmington Police Department. He showed them articles about Amanda and Lily's disappearance. He showed them photographs of Catherine's injuries. He demanded they investigate. The Wilmington police contacted the sheriff's department in Oak Ridge. Sheriff Bryant, still in office, contacted Agent Morneau at the State Bureau. The case file reopened. But reopening a case without new evidence accomplished nothing. They needed something concrete. They needed a break. The break came from the most unexpected place. From someone who had been silent for 5.5 years. Someone who had carried knowledge too heavy for a child to hold. Someone who had finally found the words and the courage to speak. Part 4, The Revelation. On August 12, 2015, Carol Jenkins received a phone call that would change everything. The caller identified himself as Detective Marcus Webb from the Wilmington Police Department. He asked if she could come to Wilmington as soon as possible. He said they needed to talk about her niece. Carol made the 3-hour drive in 2 hours and 40 minutes, her heart hammering against her ribs the entire way. Lily Ross sat in a small room at the Wilmington Police Department, 10 years old now, her blonde hair darker than it had been as a child, her blue eyes older than they should be. Beside her sat a child advocacy specialist named Dr. Rebecca Martinez, who specialized in interviewing traumatized children. Across from them, Detective Webb and Agent Morneau, who had driven from Raleigh the moment she received the call, waited with careful patience. The story of how Lily came to be in that room was itself extraordinary. She had been living under a different name, Emily Ross, enrolled in school in Wilmington, raised by Michael as his daughter. He had told teachers, neighbors, anyone who asked, that her mother had died in a car accident when she was very young. No one had questioned this explanation. No one had looked closely enough at the quiet girl with the sad eyes to see the missing child from North Carolina whose face had been on posters and news broadcasts years earlier. Children changed, grew, became unrecognizable. But Lily had never forgotten. She had carried memories of that December morning in 2009, memories she had been too young to fully understand, too frightened to speak about. Michael had told her many times that if she ever told anyone what happened, bad men would come and take her away forever. She had believed him. Children believe the adults who raise them, especially when those adults are all they have. What finally broke Lily's silence was Catherine. Over the 7 months that Michael and Catherine were married, Lily had watched her new stepmother experience what Lily dimly remembered her real mother experiencing. The raised voices late at night. The mornings where Catherine's eyes were red from crying. The way Michael controlled every aspect of Catherine's life. And then, in early August, Lily had heard Michael and Catherine arguing. She had heard Michael say, with chilling clarity, "You'll end up just like Amanda if you're not careful." Catherine had frozen. She had asked what that meant. Michael had said nothing. But Lily, listening from her bedroom, had understood the threat. The next day, when Michael was at work, Catherine had asked Lily about her mother, had asked gently, carefully, what had happened to the woman in the car accident Michael had mentioned. And Lily, 10 years old, tired of carrying secrets, had whispered, "There wasn't a car accident." Catherine had immediately taken Lily to James's apartment. Together, they had gone to the police. Now, in that small room with people who seemed kind and who promised she was safe, Lily began to talk. She told them she remembered the morning her mama disappeared. She remembered waking up to voices, loud voices, her daddy and her mama arguing. She had been scared, so she had stayed in bed, covered her head with her pillow. But she had heard her mama say, "I'm leaving and I'm taking Lily with me." She had heard her daddy say, "You're not taking her anywhere." The argument had gotten louder. Lily had heard things breaking. She had heard her mama crying. She had gotten up, crept down the hallway, peeked around the corner. She had seen her daddy grab her mama's arm. She had seen her mama try to pull away. She had seen her daddy's hand around her mama's throat. Dr. Martinez asked, very gently, what happened next. Lily's voice became smaller. She said her mama had stopped moving, had fallen down. Her daddy had looked up and seen Lily watching. He had walked over, picked her up, carried her back to her room. He had told her that mama was sick, that mama needed to go away to get better, that Lily needed to be very brave and very quiet and never tell anyone what she saw or the bad men would come. Lily had stayed in her room while her daddy did something. She didn't know what. She heard him moving around, heard the back door open and close, heard his truck start. He was gone for a long time. When he came back, he had told her they were going on an adventure. They had gotten in the truck. They had driven for hours. She remembered stopping at a motel, remembered staying there for several days. Her daddy had cut her hair short, had bought her new clothes, had started calling her Emily, had told her that was her new name, that she had to forget her old name, that mama was gone and never coming back. Agent Morno asked if Lily remembered where the motel was. Lily shook her head. She had been too little. Everything had been confusing and scary. She just remembered driving and her daddy telling her stories about their new life, making her repeat them back to him. "Your name is Emily. Your mama died in a car accident. You don't remember much because you were very small. Your name is Emily." The interview lasted 3 hours. Lily described years of living with the knowledge of what her father had done, living with the fear that if she spoke, he would hurt her too. She described nightmares where her mama called for her. She described drawing pictures at school of 3 stick figures, always 3, because even though her mama was gone, she couldn't stop including her.